Hey everybody! Welcome to Module 3 about professional ethics. This lecture is based on Chapter 11 of the textbook, Library Programs and Services, The Fundamentals by Greenwell and Evans. This is a fairly quick lecture, but it's absolutely crucial to every public librarian. Here's a link to the ALA Code of Ethics. There are no sanctions associated with this document. There are no consequences for not following these values. It is simply a set of guidelines and principles suggested by the National Professional Association of our industry, the ALA. It's up to each library to implement them as they see fit. ALA is a voluntary membership organization, not one with a legal license. So that's why there's no consequences, there's no sanctions, you don't have to follow them. They're sort of a best practices guideline, and they cover everything from collection, services, access, intellectual freedom, intellectual property, professional values, personal interests, and user needs. The whole document is linked there. I highly recommend taking a look at it. I've always loved this image. It's one that I see a lot around. Equity and equality are not the same thing. Equality is when everyone has the same equal resources, but not necessarily the same access. For example, a library that provides an ebook collection makes it available to all library users. Anybody can use that ebook collection. But in reality, not every library user has a device on which to read those ebooks, so the resource is not equitable. Equity divides resources in a way that also provides access. The library can circulate devices on which to read its ebooks. So it is impossible from a funding standpoint for public libraries to provide equal service to the entire community. There are smaller service groups with special needs, like people with low vision, or really any minority demographic in the community. If 2% of the population struggle with low vision, it makes sense that the library puts resources towards large print books, audiobooks, or Braille books, but it is not economically feasible to put an equal amount of resources into those materials as every other format or material. The budget is not divided equally between every user profile. It's divided equitably so that everyone can use the library. The library might put a few $100s into a magnifier collection to make the regular print collection, which it spends tens of thousands of dollars on, accessible to those with low vision. Let's talk about reference service. Information provided to patrons should be accurate, regardless of the type of question or the status of the requester. If information cannot be found and verified as accurate, referral is the next step. The librarian should share what they did find, point out how it does or does not answer the question that was asked, and refer to an agency or an organization or another library type that may have better resources or expertise to answer the question. Libraries must protect user confidentiality, including electronic formats. If a question is received by chat or email, it has to be protected in the same way as in-person interactions. Electronic reference is less confidential because information requesters are tied to their email addresses or social media accounts or their handles, whatever name they give to use that electronic service. The USA Patriot Act permits government authorities to confiscate library records and computers without a court order. So if there is an archive of electronic reference transactions, like chat transactions, that identify the askers, user information can be revealed. So those are some issues with the confidentiality of e-resources. Patrons may also want privacy because they're embarrassed about their question. If it's highly personal, like medical, financial, or legal, it's important to steer the patron toward resources on those general subjects. Let them know you are available to help, but give them some space to help themselves. And also, obviously help without judgment if they do ask for more information. There are others with no discretion who share their personal information loudly and widely. In those situations, the librarian can encourage the patron to keep their voice down or offer a more private space like a study room to hold the reference interview. There are limitations on the kinds of answers that can be given. Librarians can always help patrons find information on any topic, but they should be very careful to never give advice or interpretation of the material. This applies especially to legal, medical, financial questions, things like that. We can lead a patron to information about foreclosure, for example, but we cannot suggest that a particular law applies to their situation. We can lead them to information about a medical condition, clinical trials, drug side effects, or surgical procedures, but we can't suggest that any of that information applies to their individual situation. I go so far as to say very clearly that they'll need to consult with a medical professional to decide how any of the information may apply to them. Tax forms are another common situation in public libraries. Public libraries often offer tax forms to patrons as a public service. We can look up and print a particular form number with just a few keywords, but we can't give tax advice or interpret if any particular form is relevant to the patron's individual tax situation. Librarians should also not share their personal opinions on social, political, or religious topics as part of a reference transaction. Staff have to keep an open mind and help patrons find the materials they seek, with no commentary on if they disagree or agree with the topic. Materials on various perspectives of the topic can be offered, or the reference transaction can help determine if the patron wants information on a specific viewpoint. If, for example, a patron asks for information about a religion, the librarian can find out if there's a particular religious tradition or denomination they're interested in, or if they just want to browse the wider collection on all religious topics. We do not assume that the patron wants any particular information based, for example, on their mode of dress. If a nun is in a habit or a Muslim in a hijab asks about religion, we treat the reference interview as we would for any patron. We don't make assumptions based on, what we presume to be true about the patron. It gets particularly tricky when the librarian is asked for help accessing information that is like pornographic or conspiracy laden. There are laws that define what is obscene and what is allowable, though often feels inappropriate. Sometimes what is legally allowable does not match the library's behavior policy, so careful training about how to handle those situations is crucial. For information that is like fake news or conspiracy theories, it's best to offer resources like library databases or books with various viewpoints, not to try to convince the patron that they're wrong, because that's a losing battle. Simply suggesting that they try some of the resources you recommend on their topic can go a long way without adding any personal commentary or opinions. But the resources that we suggest have more authority. They still cover both sides of an issue, but from more authoritative points of view. Many challenges to library material are born out of religious or political beliefs with the intention of protecting children from inappropriate material. This situation may present a conflict between your personal beliefs and those of the profession, or your personal beliefs and those of the complainant. So at this point, hopefully all public libraries have policies and procedures in place to deal with materials challenges. Staff need to be well trained in how to handle these situations and what the library's collection development policy says, or their programming policy. If they are meant to refer all of these situations to the director, then they must know that's the procedure. Sometimes patrons just want to be heard. Having a calm, open discussion with them about what kinds of material match their values and where to find them in the library, or how to ask librarians for help finding appropriate materials, can go a long way toward resolution without a formal challenge. I don't want to sound naive either. There are definitely individuals and organized groups that have no interest in discussion and they just want what they want. Hide the Pride is a thing that rears up every year in June, which is Pride Month, and people start hiding all the books with LGBTQ themes, or they check them all out so that they are not available to other people. Worse, they may even get stolen. There have been unprecedented numbers of formal challenges in libraries in recent years for all kinds of reasons, and libraries need to be ready. So I've added some webinar links to the module for a more robust discussion of this topic. I love this debate on whether libraries are or even can be neutral places. I've linked the American Libraries Magazine article in the module. You can decide for yourself how you feel about this topic. Proponents of libraries as neutral places say that neutrality is foundational to library services. We should not put limits on idea exploration. Our spaces should be equally accommodating to programs and collections and services for all viewpoints, including hate groups, religious groups, political groups, etc. Opponents of libraries as neutral places say it's impossible for libraries to be neutral. We have finite spaces, money, staff, and time, and so we have to make the best choices possible to be as effective as possible to the most people. Meeting rooms fill up. Libraries have to choose between their book club and a hate group using that space. They make decisions that protect their staff and patrons from a safety standpoint. They make collection, selection, and weeding choices based on items that are reviewed, published by reputable sources, and in durable formats, which means they have to exclude those that don't fit that criteria. If your work is self-published, spiral-bound, endorsed by a polarizing agency defined by conspiracy theory, libraries likely won't choose to add it to the collection. So give the article a read. I love this topic. This would be a great thing to discuss in the discussion post this week. You can decide for yourself if you're a proponent or an opponent. It's just a great debate. In conclusion, ALA's Code of Ethics are guidelines for decision making. They cover 8 topic areas that can help libraries write policies and procedures to be most effective in providing library services. Equity and equality are not the same thing. Equality means everyone is treated the same exact way, regardless of a person's needs or other individual differences. Equity means everyone is provided with resources specific to their needs to be successful. There are ethical implications for reference services that we talked about, and limits to the services that we can provide. Intellectual freedom and censorship have implications for professional ethics too. And then the great debate. Are libraries neutral? Should they be neutral? Can they be neutral? This is a big, complicated, and difficult debate.